If you have ever walked into an empty apartment on handover day, you know the sound. Bare walls, no curtains, and your own footsteps coming back at you off the tile. Right now, in Dubai, that exact sound is happening 300 times a day. Between April and June 2026, the city handed over more than 27,000 new homes. At first, this might seem like a historic boom for builders. It is not. It is a massive financial trap, because every single set of keys triggers a permanent service charge bill the moment it is handed over. In downtown, that means paying 60,000 dirhams every single year, whether anyone is living there or not. And with thousands of identical empty rooms flooding the market at the exact same time, the rental income owners need to pay that bill is already collapsing. Savills counted 27,300 homes completed in Dubai in the second quarter of 2026. Of those, 17,400 were apartments and 9,900 were villas and townhouses. It was the highest quarterly delivery the firm has recorded in recent years. Cushman and Wakefield Core, measuring the same quarter with a different definition, counted just over 13,200 homes. Both numbers are in this video because both are published, and the gap between them matters more than either figure on its own. The gap exists because completion is not one event. A building receives a completion certificate from Dubai municipality. Then the developer issues a building completion notice. Then owners are called for handover, one floor at a time, over 8 to 12 weeks. A consultancy can count any of those 3 moments and be correct. So the honest sentence is this: somewhere between 13,200 and 27,300 Dubai homes crossed from construction into ownership in 1 quarter, and every one of them switched on a running cost that had not existed the day before. To understand what that does to a price, you have to stop looking at the sale figures and look at the calendar behind them. Almost nothing in Dubai is sold finished. In the second quarter of 2026, 76% of all residential transactions were off-plan, according to the same Savills review. An off-plan sale is a contract between a buyer and a developer with a delivery date attached. The buyer pays in installments into an escrow account, a structure Dubai introduced in 2007 after the previous cycle, so the money can only be drawn against verified construction progress. That structure protects the buyer's cash. It does not protect the buyer's timing. Escrow makes sure the tower gets built. It says nothing about how many other towers get built in the same season. A buyer's interest in an unfinished apartment is registered with the Dubai Land Department under an initial contract of sale, so ownership exists on paper long before the building does. The last cycle is why that paperwork exists. Between 2002 and 2008, Dubai sold off-plan with far thinner protection, and when the credit stopped in 2009, buyers were left holding contracts for towers that were never finished. Everything built since then, the escrow account, the registration, the completion notice, was designed to make sure the building gets finished. It worked. Every one of the 27,300 homes counted this quarter is a building that got finished. A single buyer can time their own purchase. Nobody times the pipeline. In the first quarter of 2026, developers launched more than 45,000 new residential units in Dubai, and the Dubai Land Department recorded 252 billion dirhams of real estate transactions in that quarter alone, up 31% on the year. Those launches were sold against a picture of the city as it looked in early 2026, not as it would look on the day they arrived. This channel exists to take one number off a headline and follow it until it turns into somebody's bill. If that is the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe now, because the next part is where the arithmetic stops being about developers and starts being about the people who bought from them. The installments end on handover day. The costs begin on handover day. Those are 2 different calendars, and Dubai has just run them into each other. Here is the running cost in full. A service charge in Dubai is set per square foot per year and approved by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, which publishes an index so owners can compare buildings before they buy. In Dubai Marina, the average sits near 16 dirhams a square foot. In Business Bay, it is close to 15. In Jumeirah Lake Towers, it is under 14. In Jumeirah Beach Residence, It is around 15. In downtown Dubai, where the towers carry deeper basements, longer lift shafts, and a district cooling connection, the published figures run from about 60 dirhams a square foot to nearly 68 on the tallest addresses. 4 times the rate of a building 15 minutes away is not a mistake in the index. It is what vertical costs. A tower with more floors needs more pumps to lift the water, more plant to move the air, and more hours of specialist maintenance for lifts that travel further. The cooling alone is usually billed as a separate consumption line on top, so the published service charge is the floor, not the ceiling. Take the middle of that downtown range. On a 1,000 square foot apartment bought at the second quarter average of 1,960 dirhams a square foot, the purchase price is about 1.96 million dirhams, and the service charge is about 60,000 dirhams a year. That is a little over 3% of the purchase price, paid again every year, forever, before a single dirham of finance cost or agency fee. An owner covers that from rent, so the whole question becomes what the rent does when 27,300 homes arrive at once. It falls. Cushman and Wakefield Core measured citywide average rents down 6% in the second quarter of 2026, against the first. In downtown Dubai, apartment rents were down 14% in that one quarter. In Dubai Marina, they were down 10%. In Dubai Hills estate apartments fell 10% and the villas fell 12%. On Palm Jumeirah, apartment rents fell 9%. 14% in one quarter is not a market cooling. It is a landlord who listed at last year's number in April and signed at a lower one in June, because 4 identical units in the same tower were listed in the same week by 4 owners who all took their keys together. Now put the 2 numbers side by side. The service charge did not fall 14%. It is fixed by an approved budget a year in advance, and a budget approved in 2025 does not know what rents did in 2026. So in a single quarter, the gap between what an apartment earns and what it costs to hold moved in one direction only. There is a person at the center of this, and it is not the developer. Walk into a handover office in Business Bay on a weekday morning, and the queue is not investors. It is a retired couple from Britain with a folder of payment receipts going back to 2022. It is a woman who bought 2 units in 2023 on a post-handover payment plan and needs both of them rented to cover the installments still running on the third. It is a snagging inspector with a clipboard and a moisture meter who is booked out 6 weeks ahead and who will tell you, if you ask him between appointments, that he has never seen this many keys move in one season. The post-handover plan is the detail that turns a good idea into a trap for that woman. It lets a buyer pay part of the price after taking possession, often over 2 or 3 years. It was designed to make ownership reachable for people who could not fund the whole purchase up front. It works when the apartment rents. When it does not rent, the buyer is paying installments, a service charge, and a cooling bill on an empty room. Meanwhile, the developers had a very good quarter. The top of the market was untouched. There were 864 residential transactions above 10 million dirhams in that quarter, and 1 villa on Jumeirah Bay Island sold for 280 million dirhams. The record sale and the 14% rent fall happened in the same 90 days, in the same city, about 20 minutes apart by road. That is worth sitting with. The people who set the delivery schedule were paid on signing. The people who took delivery are paying on holding. Those are not the same people, and only one of the 2 groups could see the whole calendar. The building manager sees it before the consultancies do. He is the one who prepares the service charge budget for the Owners Association, and he prepares it from occupancy. In a tower handed over in June, he is budgeting in October for a year in which he does not know how many of his 400 apartments will have residents. If he budgets for a full building and half of it is empty, the collection rate falls and the reserve fund absorbs the shortfall. If he budgets low to keep owners happy, the lift contract still costs what it costs. Neither choice is available to him in the quarter the keys move. He finds out afterwards. That is the quiet part of a handover wave. The costs of a tower are close to fixed from the day it opens. The income of a tower depends entirely on how many owners found tenants. When 27,300 homes open at once, Every building manager in the city is making the same guess in the same month. So why did developers not simply slow down? Because they did, and it made no difference to this quarter. New launches in Dubai fell from more than 45,000 units in the first quarter of 2026 to 5,335 units in the second. That is a cut of about 88% in 3 months, and it is the clearest signal the industry has sent since 2009. It changes nothing before 2028. A tower launched in 2023 is a signed construction contract, a mobilized contractor, a financed program, and a delivery date that carries penalties if it is missed. Cutting launches in 2026 removes supply from 2029. It cannot remove one apartment from the 32,000 units that Cushman and Wakefield Core expect to be delivered in the second half of 2026 alone. That is the shape of this problem. The tap was turned off downstream of the flood. Add those 32,000 units to the homes already delivered, and Dubai will absorb more new housing in 2026 than in any year since the market reopened after 2009. The city is also growing, and that is the fair counterpoint to everything above. Dubai added residents through 2024, 2025, and into 2026, and Emirates NBD expects the economy to grow around 4.5% in 2026. Demand is not disappearing, but population growth arrives smoothly, and buildings arrive in lumps. A tower does not deliver 3% of its apartments each month, in step with new arrivals. It delivers 400 apartments in 9 weeks, into whatever market exists on the day the notice is issued. Rent in Dubai does not move freely in either direction. The Real Estate Regulatory Agency publishes a rental index, and increases on an existing tenancy are capped against it in bands. That cap was written to protect tenants in a rising market, and for most of the last 4 years that is exactly what it did. On the way down it works differently. The cap limits what a landlord can add. Nothing limits what a landlord must subtract to win a tenant away from the 4 identical units listed the same week. So the index smooths increases and does not smooth decreases, and a quarter like this one shows up in the signed contracts almost immediately. That is why the Ajari figure matters. A rental contract is not a listing or an asking price. It is a signed number with 2 names on it. There is one absorber left, and it has a ceiling. An owner who cannot find a tenant can license the apartment for short-term letting through the Department of Economy and Tourism. Nightly rates in downtown and Dubai Marina are high enough in season to cover a service charge that annual rent no longer covers. It works for the owner who does it first. It works less well when the 4 neighbors who took keys the same week all reach the same conclusion in the same month, because they are then bidding against each other on the same platform for the same visitors, in a summer when visitor numbers are at their lowest. The measurable consequence shows up in a number that has nothing to do with prices. By the end of the second quarter of 2026, about 70% of all property valuation instructions in Dubai were for refinancing. The historical share is closer to 30%. That single line is the story compressed. A valuation is ordered when money is about to move. When most valuations support sales, owners are selling. When 70% support refinancing, owners are borrowing against what they already hold instead of selling it. They are choosing to carry the service charge and the interest rather than accept the price on offer this month. Transaction volumes agree. Savills recorded 35,884 residential transactions in the second quarter of 2026, down 19% from the first quarter. Annual Ajari registrations, the rental contracts every landlord in Dubai is required to file, were down 22%. Fewer sales, fewer registered tenancies, more borrowing against existing stock. Those 3 lines describe owners waiting, and waiting costs 60,000 dirhams a year in downtown. The obvious question is who can stop this, and the honest answer is that the machinery for slowing a handover does not exist. An owners' association can vote on a service charge budget, and the Real Estate Regulatory Agency can send that budget back for revision. Neither body can tell a developer to hold 400 finished apartments off the market for a year. The Dubai Land Department registers a transfer when the paperwork is correct. That is its job, and doing that job well is exactly what produces a quarter like this one. Owners and asset managers respond in 4 ways, and each one has a price. The first is to cut the service charge. Boards trim landscaping, stretch lift maintenance intervals, and defer facade cleaning. It works for one budget year. It moves the money into a deferred repair that arrives later and larger. And in a tower, the deferred repair is usually a lift or a chiller. The second is to hold the apartment empty and wait for the market. That costs the full service charge with no rent against it, which in downtown Dubai is 60,000 dirhams a year for 1,000 square feet, plus the cooling capacity charge that runs whether the air is on or off. The third is to accept the lower rent. That locks the new number into an Ajari contract for a year and makes it the reference point for the next negotiation, and for the valuation after that. The fourth is to refinance, which is what 70% of valuation instructions now say owners are doing. It converts a price problem into an interest payment, and it buys time. It does not remove a single apartment from the pipeline. None of those 4 responses is irrational. All 4 of them together are what a market looks like when the supply is contractually fixed and the demand is not. Here is where the evidence stops, and it stops earlier than the headlines suggest. 2 respected firms counted the same quarter and published 13,200 and 27,300. Dubai does not publish a citywide residential vacancy rate, so nobody outside the developers knows how many of those finished apartments have someone sleeping in them tonight. The 70% refinancing figure is a share of valuation instructions, not a share of all owners, and valuations are ordered by the minority of owners who are doing something. Prices in several communities are still above where they stood in 2024. And the 32,000 figure for the second half of 2026 is a forecast of deliveries, not a record of them. What can be said with the sources in hand is narrower and harder to argue with. Completion volumes reached a multi-year high in one quarter. Rents fell in the same quarter in every community measured. Service charges are approved a year ahead and did not fall with them. Launches were cut by about 88%, and that cut cannot reach any building already under contract. Anyone claiming to know where prices land in 2027 is guessing, and so is anyone calling this a collapse. Go and stand on Sheikh Zayed Road at 9 in the evening and look up. That is the only measurement available to the public, and people have been making it from the pavement since 2009. Count the lit windows on a tower that handed over in June, and you are counting occupancy, badly, from the street. Do it again in March, and the count means something. What changed this year is not the arithmetic of a Dubai apartment. The arithmetic has been the same since the first service charge was collected. What changed is the assumption underneath it, which was that handovers would arrive spread out enough for the city to absorb them one building at a time. The second quarter of 2026 is the first quarter where that assumption was tested at full scale, and the rent column answered before the price column did. The buildings are finished. The contracts are signed. The keys are already moving, about 300 a day, into the hands of people who agreed the price in a different market and now own the bill in this one. This video is analysis of published market data and is not financial, investment, or policy advice. The sources and the exact reporting periods are in the pinned comment. If you own or manage a unit that handed over this year, put the service charge per square foot and the community in the comments. That is the number nobody publishes at scale, and it is the one that decides who can afford to wait. Which leaves one question. If the only way to hold an apartment through a soft year is to borrow against it, what happens to the owners who cannot borrow?